Hello everyone. Today I want to talk about HR management using analytics. This is basically Moneyball, but for corporates and for corporate employees. What is the problem? The problem is that, especially in today's remote work world, it is very difficult to find out what employees are doing, whether employees are at capacity, over capacity, or under capacity. This is especially true if a corporation is looking at how they could potentially cost cut or make a restructure, but with a remote workforce. So why use data analytics? Traditionally, this type of work is done by using teams of typically consultants or internal management teams, where they would go in, review what employees are doing and what their capacity is and how that compares. Using data, though, this type of work is fully scalable. So the number of consultants needed is different, whether you're looking at a team of 20 versus a team of 25,000. However, with analytics, the work is essentially the same, whether you do have a team of 20 or a team of 25,000, which for a large restructure can mean lots of cost savings in terms of the amount of time it takes to do that work. What data is typically analyzed? So it very much depends on the business in question, as well as the teams under review. As an example, one could look at hours. This is especially good for operational teams, so teams that essentially are there to do a job for X hours a day. Because everything is digital and on computers now, all hours are tracked either via computer logs or timesheet. And a very good piece of work is to reconcile computer logs, so how much time was actually worked versus timesheet, how much time was stated to be worked. Profitability numbers are also very good. This is essentially management accounting, but because the data is so granular now, you can get a profitability by employee number oftentimes, and you could get that number as an actual number, so not an average, without assumptions. You could get that on a monthly, weekly, daily, sometimes even hourly basis to really track that in a very granular level through time. Otherwise, depending on the business, there's usually bespoke performance metrics that can be created. So, for example, billable hours, number of tickets closed, difficulty of tickets, that sort of data. So what does this kind of analytics look like in practice? So I have a case study that is loosely based on some projects that we've done in the past. So for this particular case study, it is cost cutting in response to falling revenues. So the problem was that due to a structural shift within the industry that the client was in, revenues were down significantly in a very short period of time. And the business really needed to restructure and work out what costs that they could pull back in order to improve profitability and cash flows. So why use data analytics? So the reason why we want to use data analytics is that this business do not have a lot of excess cash flows in order to invest in consultants. And they also want to do this work quickly and cheaply. So this type of work meant that we could do one project, it would cover the entire workforce and be fully scalable in the future. What data did we use? So this business was kind of mobile service provider. So think mobile dog groomer, mobile hairdresser, mobile mortgage broker, that type of business. And what it meant was that each employee that was a frontline employee did actually have a profitability per employee. So with that sort of business model, we were able to look at timesheets, expense claims. So because they were mobile, they did have expenses for the cost of being on the road. So that was taken into account, and also salary. We were able to match those costs against detailed revenues per employee and generate a profit per employee. From that profit per employee, it was then very easy to see which employees were profitable after the structural change and which employees were not. One thing to note was that for the purposes of this project, we did not take into account whether or not unprofitable employee was because they weren't a very good employee, or they were just in a part of the business that just did not do very well. For this purpose, they were just looking at that cash flow conservation piece and getting to it as quickly as possible. So it wasn't a factor, but it definitely could have been considered during this. So the impact was that after this project, they were able to reduce headcount from 250 to 200. Those 50 employees were saved about $5 million a year in salary costs and other associated costs. And we were able to do this, importantly, with minimal impact on revenue and service delivery ability. This was overall a $70,000 project over 6 to 7 weeks, of which 2 weeks was waiting for data to be delivered. If the data was a bit more timely, we could have done it in 4, maybe even 3 to 5 weeks. So I know I always talk about data monetization, ROI. So what is the ROI in this case? It's actually very difficult to estimate. So obviously the investment was the $70,000 in fees, but in terms of the actual return, the business was going to cut $5 million a year out of the business, regardless, one way or the other. The real actually return was that we were able to do this with minimal impact on revenues. The alternative would have been, had they not had the data, what other course of cost cutting they have embarked on, and what would have been the revenue impact, which we were being paid to quantify. But as an example, before we came through, if, say, the data project didn't work out for whatever reason, the business was willing to just close down entire divisions or entire regional offices without regard to how much revenue they'd be giving up, just based on the fact that a particular division was not making money. However, through this project, we were able to prove that, sure, some offices were not profitable, but if certain costs had come out, they would be able to deliver the same service and return to profitability without having to shut down the entire division. So that would have been the true return. And it certainly would have exceeded at what our project cost, but by how much, I'm afraid I didn't have that number at hand. Hope this was helpful. If you're looking to do a project like this or thinking about it, definitely send me a message on LinkedIn. As always, I post these sort of videos weekly on LinkedIn and on YouTube. If you search for Dudata on YouTube, my channel should come through. Hope this helps.